What is up, ladies and gents? You know what time of day it is. It's XCN time, and in today's video we're going to be talking all about XCN. We're going to be discussing what we're seeing here on the charts, and I'll be giving you guys my price prediction for XCN over the coming days and weeks, as well as my targets for 2025. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. Of course, if you are a new viewer, then welcome to this channel. If you do like this sort of content, hit the like button and subscribe for more. If you are a returning viewer, as always, welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you all here. So, of course, we're going to be diving straight into this video. We're going to start off with the shorter term here on XCN and then move on to those 2025 price targets. Right now, we are on the 1-day chart, and throughout the past few weeks here on XCN, we have been seeing some sort of downtrend. But I do think that in the shorter term, over the coming days and weeks, we are due a relief pump here on XCN. So in the shorter term, I've actually turned bullish here on XCN because of the fact that conditions here on XCN are generally oversold. We've seen this downtrend now for quite some time when we zoom out here on the charts. If we have a look at the RSI, for example, we've seen the RSI on XCN borderline oversold here, where we are at 34 at the moment. Generally, when we look throughout XCN's history, when the RSI comes down to this lower dash line here or gets close to it, this has generally been a decent time to be buying into XCN. So for example, have a look at what happened in April of 2025. You can see that this was a bottom here for the RSI that also marked the bottom for the price before we saw this massive pump. Again, we saw a bottom here in June of 2025 that corresponded to a bottom there of the one we saw back in June. Of course, not all signals have worked in the past, so I will say that in August we did get a signal in this region, but the prices did keep falling from that point forward. So now what we are seeing is prices, the RSI yet again coming to this lower dash line here, which means we are borderline oversold. And so if we do see history repeat in some cases, then we should at least see some relief here on XCN, where maybe over the coming days and weeks, we start to head up like this. Now, on top of that as well, another reason why I think that is because if we have a look at the MACD, we are pretty close to a point where we could be seeing some sort of crossover. So you can see that over the past few days, the red bars have been getting less and less. The two lines have started to constrict. And so if we get a crossover on the 1-day MACD, that would be a decent buy signal in my opinion. But what I think is more important from the 1-day MACD is the fact that we've seen a triangle that looks like this. And very interestingly, right now, as you guys can see, the MACD is really close to this bottom support here for the MACD lines. So essentially, if we see this bottom support here for the MACD hold up once again, we should see the MACD starting to head up from this point forwards, and that should translate into the price at least going upwards for some time here on XCN. So where do I see XCN going to in the shorter term? Well, where I think XCN could get to is anywhere along this resistance. And the resistance that we are currently facing here on XCN looks something like this. So if we do see a short-term pump here on XCN over the coming days, in my opinion, we could see prices get up to about 0.012. Now, it might not seem like much, but if we actually measure that from a percentage standpoint, that is a pretty quick gain to be had in the shorter term, 35%. Now, XCN has had a history of doing these pumps, so I would definitely not put it out of the question for XCN to make this move upwards here in the shorter term. Now, if we look past the very short term here and consider XCN over the course of 2025, what I also think we are seeing, which is probably more important for the longer term holders, is this massive triangle pattern. Now, right now, we have seen two tests of that support. That dump that we saw throughout crypto came down to test this support one more time. And of course, that paints us this descending triangle pattern. Now, basically, a descending triangle has a greater likelihood of breaking out to the downside rather than the upside, but that doesn't mean to say that the upside is not possible. So if we see a scenario where prices start to head up for Q4, and remember, Q4 is generally a bullish time for crypto, so there is this bullish bias in the markets. It might not feel like it yet because of October and the performance we've seen so far, but there still is a bullish bias for this season. So throughout November, December, if we start to head up here on XCN and we start to break out past 0.012, that could be very, very good for the price, because it means that we could be seeing this descending triangle breakout to the upside. And of course, we get a huge price target if we see a breakout of the distance between the first test of support to the first test of resistance. And if we drag this measuring tool to where we see that breakout, we could be looking at 0.077 as a result from a triangle breakout. So of course, that is about a 6x to the upside from wherever we break out, or from where the price is currently standing right now. We're looking at a closer to an 8 or a 9x. So a very ambitious price target stemming from this triangle pattern. Of course, the same can be said for the downside. If we see a clear breakdown from this triangle pattern, then theoretically the price target would be as low as 0.0008. But of course, we have plenty of places where I think XCN will find some support if we do start to head lower. So as you can see, we have the fib levels on the screen. If we do see a breakout to the downside, I think some great buying opportunities here on XCN would be at this 0.236 fib. That tells us we could see 0.005. But if we do head down lower than that, 0.0025 is another place of interest here for XCN. So of course, if you guys want to get $10 completely free to buy any dips here on XCN, then don't forget to check out the MEX exchange. As you guys can see on the screen, they're giving every new user who signs up using the link in the description down below $10 to get started. Now, this exchange does not require KYC. The only thing you need to do to get this money is to deposit some fiat or crypto into your account, and then you'll get that $10 straight away. So like I say, you can use it to buy some XCN, or you can use it to long or short XCN with up to 20 times leverage. Again, link for this is in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Let's get back into this video. So of course, this is the main price pattern that we are seeing here for XCN. That's going to determine what happens to XCN in my opinion. For the longer term, I am still very bullish here for XCN. My conviction has not changed, and I think the prices are still going to be going quite a bit higher. Of course, the price targets that I have for the longer term here on XCN fall along these very fib levels that you see here on the screen, because as you guys can see, XCN has used them as places of support and resistance throughout its lifetime. So you can see, for example, that this lower support where the price has come to on two occasions has been at the 0.382 fib. And during this pump that we saw in April, we came up to the 0.786 fib and used it as a resistance. So the point with these fibs are that when we start to journey upwards here on XCN, we could potentially see XCN use these fib levels as places where it finds some resistance before continuing upwards. So when we go to make new highs here on XCN, which means getting past this 0.05 level, we can see these fib levels as places where XCN might potentially find atop this bull run. So the next level past the previous high at 0.05 is this 1.272 fib. That tells us we could see 0.11. Now beyond that, we've got this 1.414 fib, and that is also the previous all-time high here on XCN. So this is one of my main price targets, one of my main ambitious price targets for XCN in 2025. The second one that I have for you, if you're feeling very ambitious, is this one here that sits at 0.32, and that's at the 1.618 fib. So these upper two price targets are the ambitious price targets for XCN. If you're feeling a little bit more conservative and you just want to lock in some profits here on XCN, the other two that I'm looking at is obviously the price target stemming to the upside from this triangle that sits at 0.077. And of course, this one fib here is also a pretty solid target to have at 0.05. So we've got four separate price targets depending on how ambitious or conservative you want to be. Of course, these two price targets down here, of course, it's all contingent on what happens with this triangle pattern. If we do see a breakout to the downside, it doesn't mean that these price targets up here will not be hit. I just think that it will take longer than we had anticipated to get up there if we see the prices head down from this triangle. So maybe we see something like this first before we start to journey upwards in 2026. So, of course, those are my longer term targets here for XCN. And of course, one final word on the crypto market in general to support the bullish case here on XCN is the fact that if we quickly take a look at coin market cap and we just go on the home page, you guys can see that we've got these two indicators up here, the Fiat and Greed Index and the Altcoin Season Index. Now, basically, these values that we're seeing up here are close to the values that we saw back at the start of 2025 when Trump announced those tariffs. Now, if we go on the Fiat and Greed chart, you can see that when those tariffs were announced, we saw extreme fear in the markets. Right now, we are seeing fear, but generally speaking, when we see the sentiment this low, it's generally a good buying opportunity. Like the saying goes, buy the fear and sell the greed. Of course, if we had bought at that April low there, when the sentiment was at 15, we can see that shortly thereafter, the sentiment went back into greed, topped out at about 73 there, and of course, translated into the prices here in crypto, we would have made quite a bit of profit if we had bought down here and sold up here. Again, the same can be said for that dip that we saw in 2024. If you guys were around back in August of 2024, we saw Bitcoin hit about 50,000 at the low there. We saw a sentiment low too of 26. If we had bought at that point and sold after we saw the markets return to greed and extreme greed, we would have sold crypto at a much higher price. So if you believe in historical data, then at some point in the future, whether it's weeks or months, we will see this chart go back into greed and extreme greed. I am pretty certain of that. And of course, translated into the prices of crypto, that means that prices should be much higher from where they are today. So in my opinion, Fiat and Greed Index is very bullish if you're looking to buy into cryptos right now. Altcoin Season Index, very similar story. Right now, we are at 25, which is close to the tariff lows that we saw earlier this year. Over the past few months, we saw this actually rise to 80. So very similar to the Fiat and Greed Index. If you're buying at these lows here when it's still Bitcoin season and selling when this value gets closer to 100, then you're going to realize some profits. So of course, at the end of the day, now is a decent buying opportunity here in crypto in general, in my opinion. Of course, for the best possible chances to see prices go sky high throughout crypto and here on XCN, what we want to see are these two values as close to 100 as possible. Not one in isolation, but both of them together. So ideally for Fiat and Greed Index, we want to see this at least 80. For the Altcoin Season Index, we want to see this at least 75. So good news, we're nowhere near that point yet. So if you're watching this video now, in my opinion, you are still early and now is a decent time to be buying. Of course, if you're a shorter term holder, just be prepared for a scenario where we lose the 0.0076 level. Of course, that is a key level to watch out for in the shorter term. But if what I'm saying is correct, we should at least see some relief over the next few days and weeks where prices probably get up to this 0.012 area over the coming days and weeks. So of course, those are my thoughts here for XCN. That's pretty much what I wanted to say in a nutshell. Of course, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Do let me know down in the comments if you're a holder here on XCN. If you are a holder, what are your personal thoughts on XCN? Are you bullish? Are you bearish? Do you think we're going to see a top in 2025 or 2026? Let me know. Always love to hear from you guys. Thank you once again and have a great rest of your day.